Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III.
Hello, Mac Pack. It's good to be back with you for another episode of our program. This is On the Move, the show that attempts to inspire you to stand up for your rights. I'm your host, Mack Worley III. So, first and foremost, I just want to get to it. If you are in the Florida area, you experienced the Hurricane Matthew that went through there. If you felt the effects of this storm, I just want to say I hope everything's well with you. I hope you're doing all right. I hope you didn't have to deal with too much damage and everyone was safe. With that said, I want to move on here and let's go through the featured topics of today's episode. Today the show's titled Toasting the Apocalypse. This is episode 137 of our program. And by the way, if you're just joining us, we talk about all sorts of things. Guns, liberty, philosophy, government, politics, that kind of stuff, social issues, you name it, we probably have discussed it here. So I just want to say thank you so much for joining us, for tuning in. I know you got a lot of options, and in fact, one of those options is why we're only doing an hour-long show today. At 9 o'clock tonight, there will be a presidential debate between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. Woo! The excitement is killing me. Oh, my goodness, I just can't wait. I don't know if any of you can wait, but I am just, woo! Boy, I can't wait to hear each candidate start arguing about how they want to destroy America. So that's why today is the episode is titled Toasting the Apocalypse. I'm going to go ahead and crack one open now. If you guys are interested in joining us, please feel free in doing so yourself. Here we go. That's my beer being opened right there. And I'm enjoying the Samuel Adams Oktoberfest, by the way. I don't know if you guys are into the specialty style beer, but I do enjoy the earthy and smooth taste with a deep malty complex and roasted sweetness. Anyway, so and as I've been saying, this election actually doesn't matter. We're actually choosing between two progressives. One is a globalist and the other one is a nationalist. So both of them are still actually socialists. They just don't want to make that change overnight. They would like to progressively move towards that. Again, that's what a progressive is. A progressive is a socialist, is a communist. They do it in slow increments, progressively, as the name entails. So, without further ado, our featured topics for today are going to be why the U.S. will invade Syria. It doesn't matter if Donald Trump gets elected. It doesn't matter if Hillary gets elected. We're going to be in Syria with boots on the ground. So I want to talk about why. Why is that going to happen? The U.S. petrodollar is the cause, the reason why we will be there, no matter who gets elected. And then I want to talk about civility. Why is it important? I'm going to be joined by Brett Sanders. He's going to discuss his take on it. He has an opposing view on this. I happen to think civility is pretty important, but we'll get into that on that conversation. But he's of the opinion that we should be offensive to get our message across of liberty. So I'd like to hear him out, hear what he has to say, and we'll just kind of hash it out, see what happens. See what we, again, he may convince me. I could be totally wrong on this. We'll see. Anyway, then I want to talk about after at the end of the show here, right before we end the show, I want to talk about the difference between reasonable people and unreasonable people. I want to kind of tie it into the non-aggression principle and things like that. If you're not familiar with it, it's a libertarian philosophy. Please look it up or continue listening, and we'll talk about it. So, anyway, we got a lot of other stuff that we can talk about today, but not a lot of time. We're only doing an hour-long show today, so just keep that in mind. So let's go ahead and, without further ado, I want to just dive right into some of the meat of today's show. I want to talk about how we're going to end up with our boots on the ground, with American boots on the ground in Syria, and why. So we're going to start it off with a Mac attack. Here we go.
It's time for the Mack attack!
All right, so again, I've been saying this election does not matter. It really honestly doesn't. Either one of these candidates, no matter who gets elected, Hillary Clinton is going to continue pushing for a globalist agenda, meaning international bodies of bureaucrats who aren't subject to American votes are going to be getting in higher positions, having more influence in these bureaucracies, which will impact our laws here in our country and our sovereignty. If Donald Trump gets elected, he's very likely going to, if we believe what he says to be true, he's very likely going to pull back from these international bodies, but he's also going to get us involved more in Syria. He'll end up putting us, and same with Hillary, she'll both end up putting us in a direct conflict with Russia over Syria. And if Donald Trump gets elected, he very likely is going to collapse this entire petrodollar system and house of cards that we have. It's all based on credit. Everything is credit. If we default on our loans, as Donald Trump has suggested, that will dramatically, I can't even begin to tell you how much that is going to affect your life. The petrodollar system will collapse because the U.S. dollar will appear weak, and then people won't need U.S. dollars to buy oil because people will be selling oil in other currencies, because the whole reason why we can convince other currencies other than military force to sell their oil in U.S. dollars is because the U.S. dollar is strong. And the reason why it looks strong is this whole U.S. dollar petro system. The reason why it's set up like this, when countries need to get U.S. dollars to buy oil, they have to sell us goods cheap. When they sell us goods cheap, we give them U.S. dollars. They take that U.S. dollars to buy oil. They also keep that money outside of our economy. So if Donald Trump's defaulting on loan messes up our credit rating, if Donald Trump's tariffs cause people to not be able to sell cheap goods to America, this whole thing comes crumbling down. The U.S. dollar will stop appearing strong, and in comparison, other currencies that are being artificially suppressed are going to look better. And places like Russia and China are already making efforts to back their currencies with gold. In fact, the renminbi, the Chinese renminbi, it's debated upon right now whether or not it is currently 100% backed by gold. China and Russia are both the largest buyers of gold right now. What are they preparing for? What do they know that's around the corner? Well, I will tell you one thing that Russia is preparing for that might make you, I don't know, just a little nervous, a little anxious. Russia has launched, this is according to the independent.co.uk, this is written by Matt Payton, Friday the 7th, October 2016. Russia launches massive nuclear war training exercise with 40 million people. The Russian government has launched a nationwide civil defense training exercise to ensure the country is prepared in the event of a nuclear, chemical, and biological attack from the West. They understand what is happening right now. So amid growing international tensions, particularly over Russia's conduct in Syria, the defense ministry run Zvezdev, I can't say this stuff, it's in Russian, folks, I apologize, TV network announced last week schizophrenics from America are sharpening nuclear weapons for Moscow. Lasting 3 days, the exercise is being run by the Ministry for Civil Defense, Emergencies, and Elimination of Consequences of Natural Disasters. It's EMERCOM, Emercon, and it will involve 200,000 emergency personnel and the cooperation of 40 million civilians. So they're shutting down businesses. They're having their fire department run all over the place, trying to put out mock fires, nuclear fires. They're making efforts here to protect themselves from a war that our government isn't even talking about. I wonder what they're preparing for here. It seems pretty obvious. They believe, from my summation here, that they are going to be put head-to-head against the United States in a conflict over Syria. And it's interesting enough here that we are now seeing the United States take an entirely different stand with Russia. Remember, not too long ago, I was talking about how Russia it was trying to basically work with the United States, and we were pretending that we were going to work with them, and then we bombed a Syrian government, again, Assad's government. That's the proxy of Russia in this conflict in Syria. Russia's proxy is Assad, the Syrian government. Our proxy is the quote-unquote moderate rebels, which we're not training, which don't exist, and are in fact actually ISIS. And we've been consistently arming, funding, and we actually created ISIS. So we are, in fact, using the proxy of ISIS against Russia's proxy, the Assad regime. So I digress. So now we're not making the gains that we wanted with our proxy. Our proxy is actually being pushed back because of Russia's involvement, and it has been rather effective. The Russians have been able to maintain a hold on the Assad government for a much smaller tract of territory than what they originally had, but now they're holding their ground. And what happened, the big thing that ticked off the Russians and really sent this diplomatic cooperation spiraling out of control. Again, it was all facade. We were pretending to participate with each other to defeat ISIS. So, again, what happened is the United States just recently, a few shows ago I mentioned this, the United States has bombed a Syrian force, government force, and they claimed that they thought it was an ISIS group, but it was obviously wrong. So the Russian government came out and accused the United States of cooperating with ISIS, trying to help ISIS, which again, in fact, they are actually doing that. Again, Russia's not a good guy. There's no good guys in this situation. No good guys. That's why we are toasting to the apocalypse. There we go. Cheers, everybody. Because we're going to end up in World War III over this. And right now, John Kerry is saying, this is an article on TheGuardian.com, Russia and Syria must face war crime investigations. This is coming from John Kerry, Secretary of State. The U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has called for Russia and Syria to face war crimes investigations for their bombing of civilian targets. Kerry was speaking before a meeting with the French Foreign Minister Jean-Marc Ayrault, I don't know how to say that, to discuss a new Franco-Spanish resolution presented to the UN Security Council on Friday, calling for a restoration of ceasefire in Aleppo, the resumption of humanitarian deliveries, and to end aerial bombing. So now John Kerry and the United States government is trying to discredit their enemy, trying to demonize them. Again, plenty to demonize about Russia, obviously. Russia has no qualms about bombing civilians. Again, no good guys. There are no good guys in this scenario. But this is all adding fuel to the fire. They're basically going to use this and this tactic now to justify we need to go into Syria, and they're going to say we need to go in to stop ISIS, which we have created. We armed them in Benghazi. When we pulled up stakes in Iraq, they filled that power vacuum. They came rushing in and overran the Iraqi security forces. They got our guns that we left those guys, our ammunition, our equipment, our armored vehicles. Then they robbed a bank, by the way, and at that point they were called Al-Qaeda in Iraq, and then after they did this, they called themselves ISIS. So we're going to go into Syria, and we're going to claim it's because we want to kill ISIS. We want to stop ISIS. It's not why we want to topple Assad. And why do we want to topple Assad? What does this matter? Why do we want to kill Assad? Well, it's because we want a oil pipeline that is going from Saudi Arabia, and it's going to go up through Syria into Turkey, up into Europe, and supply them with the oil. And it's all going to be sold in U.S. dollars. Again, petrodollar security. The Russians don't want this, so that's why they're involved. And their proxy, Syria, the Assad regime, don't want this either. So they're not going to allow it. And because of this, and by the way, Assad just so happens to sell his oil in currencies other than U.S. dollars. And as you know, the pattern repeats. We did this with Saddam. Saddam started selling his oil outside of U.S. dollars, so we toppled him. Gaddafi started selling his oil outside of U.S. dollars, so we toppled him. Assad's trying to sell his oil outside of U.S. dollars, and we're trying to topple him. And because Russia's involved, and this has turned into a proxy war, it's not being effective. We're not effectively taking him out. So what this will lead to is an escalation. This will go from a proxy war to an outright Cold War. And now what Russia is doing is targeting American information systems, cyber hacking. This is going to escalate from there into a hot war, I suspect. And again, I even suspect that we may see a potential possibility of Russia trying to do a cyber attack to take out our power grid. Again, I've warned about this. But if you're not familiar with it, check out our previous episodes. We got a lot of information on this. But anyway, we got to cut to a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to be joined by Brett Sanders. You guys don't want to go anywhere.
Have you visited the On the Move with Mack Worley store? We've got amazing original design t-shirts, hoodies, cell phone cases, and coffee mugs for sale at OnTheMoveShow.com. Just click the shop link on our homepage. You won't want to miss out on the iHeart Open Carry and Bare Arms t-shirts for only $20 plus shipping. Again, just go to OnTheMoveShow.com and click the shop link on our homepage. Your purchases will help make the On The Move show bigger and better. We appreciate your support. Are you an activist who needs affordable flyers or brochures for passing out literature? Or a political candidate who's looking for business cards, logo designs, yard signs, or vehicle decals? Email me, Latasha Worley, for all your graphic design needs at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com. And don't forget to mention On The Move to get a 10% discount on all graphic design services.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III.
And we're back. I appreciate y'all sticking with us through the break. At this point, we're joined by a good friend of mine. His name is Brett Sanders. He's a YouTube phenomenon, and he's a friend of the show. Hey, Brett, are you there?
I'm here.
Hey, man. First of all, I just want to say thanks so much for joining us. It's good to have you back.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I wanted to focus today on, first of all, today's episode is titled Toasting the Apocalypse. Let me just ask you, are you planning on watching this presidential election?
Oh, absolutely.
Got
my popcorn and blanket and ready to go.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm actually getting a good drink on here. I'm drinking some Samuel Adams Oktoberfest. By the way, we're not receiving any money from Sam Adams, FYI. But I'll gladly take Sam Adams beer or beer money. That'd be great. But so we're ending the show at 9. I'm going to go watch these two candidates talk about how they're going to destroy the country this week. So, what are your thoughts on this? Are you excited about either one of these guys, or are you voting Libertarian or third party or something, or what's your deal?
I surprise a lot of people when I say I'm actually excited about a Donald J. Trump presidency, and it goes against a lot of libertarian thinking, and I've caught a lot of flack for it. But I think it's refreshing that there's this businessman who's not really owned by any special interests, and he goes through a primary season and just literally speaks his mind. He says mean and offensive things, and he doesn't apologize for it up until last Friday when he was caught on the hot mic. But for all intents and purposes, he says what he thinks, and if it offends somebody, he doesn't care. And there's been like a whole resurgence of almost an entire movement of conservatives who are just fed up with milquetoast, Republicans or libertarians who try to play this game. And to see, Trump up there really just smashing political correctness was exciting for me. Not to mention, some other, issues where I feel like he could actually, toe the conservative line. And, at the end of the day, I think it's a lot better than a Hillary Clinton presidency. So, it is the lesser of two evils, so to speak, but he does bring some things to the table that we've never seen in politics before. So that's kind of where I stand.
I'm just curious, what do you mean by it? Because I hear this, I think this is a talking point, and I would like to hear an explanation on what it actually means from you, the lesser of two evils. What does that mean?
Well, I mean, you can look at any president or leader as evil. I mean, at the end of the day, they're going, the government's going to grow. The Federal Reserve will keep lending money to our government, and, there will be wars and conflicts, and, it's not like Trump's just going to go in there and turn this country around. I mean, he could do some good things, maybe slow the eventual collapse, but, he's got some really bad policies, too. He's got some really bad economic policies. He's got some bad civil liberty stances, and so, those are things that I stand against. So it literally is picking the lesser of two evils. And I think Hillary Clinton and the Clinton crime family is very representative of evil. I don't think you can get any more evil than the Clinton dynasty. So I think Trump is definitely lesser than that.
I see. So, for me, I personally, I just don't want to vote for evil. That's kind of how I roll. And I mean, I understand. Again, I for people out there who disagree with me, more power to you. I understand your position, and I get why you're saying what you're saying, Brett. I understand. I don't want to choose somebody who I believe is going to do harm to my country, and who I think is, in fact, has backward policies that will end up not only instigating an economic collapse in the case of Donald Trump. His tariff policies, I think alone, if all the other stuff was off the table and we're just talking about tariffs, that alone I think will really harm American interest, because first of all, that's a high tax plan. I mean, that you're calling for raising taxes on Americans who buy foreign goods. So that's a high tax plan. But moreover, it actually harms this. The whole petrodollar, as I explained in the first 15 minutes of the show, it will cause damage to the petrodollar, and we're not producing anything here in America, at least not like we ought to be. We have way too much regulation. I hear Trump kind of say some things about cutting regulation. This is kind of a new advent. He hasn't, up until, I would say, maybe 2 months ago, I hadn't heard him talk much about the regulatory state. But now, I'm hearing him talk about cutting regulations. Do you think that Donald Trump would actually harm the American economy based on his economic points that he's mentioned, or do you think he's actually going to be able to prolong the collapse? And first of all, do you think there is a collapse coming?
I think the collapse is inevitable. At least there will be a currency reset. I mean, it's a debt-based currency, so for its survival, it literally has to grow exponentially in debt. And so it doesn't take a mathematician to figure out that you can't do that forever. I mean, there's going to be probably some hyperinflation, if not just a complete currency reset. But yeah, back to Trump. I mean, he's got some really boneheaded ideas on basically foreign trade and keeping businesses here and, spawning economic growth, and tariffs is a horrible idea. And, it's not going to spawn any growth whatsoever, and, it's not going to stop anybody from leaving either. Now, when he talks about cutting regulation or any of the other good stuff, at the end of the day, he's not a dictator. He's not going to be able to just go in and force Congress into his ideas. But I think talking about less regulation and lower taxes, and all the tax plan he laid out was pretty solid for Republican. At the end of the day, I mean, it's not like he's going to wave his magic wand and we're going to have tariffs. And I would hope that he brings along some economic advisors who would say, yeah, that's not going to work. It's going to have the opposite effect. So,
do you think that Trump
like I said,
will listen to anybody else other than Trump?
I sure hope so. He seems to surround himself with good people in his business as well, and takes advice from the people around him. I would contribute a lot of his success to the people that he's hired, not necessarily his own doing. But yeah, I mean, it's just not fun to sit here and select a leader that, you know, is not a Ron Paul and is not someone who, you know, adheres to the principles of liberty. I mean, he doesn't even pretend to be a constitutionalist. So, one of my big other points to kind of pivot here is his nationalistic approach, because, you know, the Democrats, they love immigrants. They love illegal immigrants coming here, and it's because they come and vote for the Democratic Party. I mean, they come here and vote, I think, 70% Democrat. And
they
of course,
they don't love all illegal immigrants, by the way. They only love the ones coming from South America.
South America, or the plan to import a bunch of Syrian refugees.
Yeah, Syrian refugees, yeah.
Either way, they're importing their voter base, and they've got a financial interest in that, and they've also got, just to remain in power, they've got a political interest in that. And so, you know, as libertarians, I'm sitting around looking, you know, we're trying to build and make as many libertarians and conservatives as we can, to hopefully be the majority and seize power and start, you know, making solutions. But it's kind of hard to do when you've got a state that is churning out, you know, brain-dead high school graduates, you know, that are just completely zombies, that have no clue about liberty or, you know, self-rule or individualism, and they just want free stuff. And so the state's churning out statists faster than we can make libertarians and conservatives. And then on top of that, you want to start importing people from South America and Syria, and, you know, this is just not good for our agenda. That's my take on that. I would like to, I'd like to close the border and start you know, solving problems at home. And you know, immigration, you know, I think is not in our best interest. So I'm with Trump on that, and that's something that I've totally kind of done a 180 on, because a lot of libertarians don't really believe in borders, in state borders, that is.
Yeah.
But you know, we currently live under a state, and we have nation states that aren't going anywhere, and so I think as if we want to, you know, sustain our movement, we ought to, you know, want to preserve what we have here.
I see. So you know, I'm on board with you as far as to a point, and I just want to clarify, because you said you don't really like immigration. I love immigration, but I love selective immigration. The way I look at it is it's a job hiring process. We are deciding whether or not we want to bring you on to our team if you're coming in through the legal process. Now, if you're not coming in through the legal process, you come here illegally, you violated our laws, we should have every right to deport you, because the way I look at that is it is an act of aggression. It is a violation of the non-aggression principle to come here illegally, to violate our laws. And, you know, we as a society have, again, all the government is we've put our backs together and said that we're going to protect each other's life, liberty, and property. And if people try to come into our territory and violate our laws, their first act here is a felony. I think that we should send them away, and we should be selective in who we bring here. If we're going to bring in immigrants, let's make sure they're going to either create a job or they're going to fill a job that we don't have enough Americans who want to do that job. Like, for example, nurses or machinists. Those are two job categories that I know are underemployed. So we should bring in people to fill those jobs, but not, let's say, for example, engineers. If engineers are, we have too many Americans with those degrees and not enough jobs to fill those degrees. I think that's harmful, and I think we should be selective. I mean, again, it's a job hiring process. If somebody's applying from an area like, I don't know, let's just throw a country out there, Saudi Arabia, and we have somebody from, let's say, Australia, who can do the same job, who's equally qualified, and going to bring the same things to our country, I think we should be selective and not choose the people from a nation that has a lot of terrorism coming from there. That's what I think. That's just my opinion. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, and I haven't really, I'm not a student of immigration or immigration policy, but I just know that typically immigrants are coming here because their own country is in such disrepair that they can't survive. And so they're all coming here because there's still some opportunity. And obviously that's dwindled a whole lot over the last century. But there's still more economic promise here in this country than where they're coming from. The problem is when they get here, they don't realize that the reason their old country is in the state it is because it's ran by corrupt dictators and they don't have any concept of liberty. And so the thing that baffles me is they come here and still vote to basically bring their country here. And even if they are a skilled laborer, if they're voting against my political interests, which is basically my natural rights, I've got problems with that as well.
Yeah.
And so you see my dilemma here. Obviously I'd love to just screen everybody that comes in and say, if you don't understand liberty and you're not a libertarian, I don't want you here. Because you have an opportunity to come in here and vote my rights away. And we're seeing that happen at record rates. And so if they didn't have the ability to affect my life by voting and becoming, part of the political process, I wouldn't care. I wouldn't care what you do here. In fact, I wouldn't even care if there were borders if you didn't have an opportunity to vote away my natural rights. But we're seeing, the numbers say something different. When they come here, they vote Democrat, and obviously it's, basically the Communist Party if you look at it. So, I've just got some reservations there. But obviously, it seems like if they come here and are productive and they do, earn and create businesses, that tells me they're more likely to want to keep that capital, and they would typically vote Republican. So.
Agreed. Yeah, it's kind of like
it's not a perfect science.
It's kind of like the New York citizens coming down from New York, fleeing the regulatory state in New York, moving to Florida, and then voting for the same kind of policies that led to why they left in the first place. I understand where you're coming from. And again, that's why I think we should be very, very selective. We should make sure that the people coming here that we allow into our country are not going to be immediately placed upon the welfare state, which puts them dependent upon the Democrat Party and makes them a lifelong Democrat voter. But I digress. We got to cut to a commercial break. Would you mind sticking with us to the break? I want to talk more with you about civility. Is that cool with you? Cool.
Absolutely.
All right. We'll be right back after this break, folks. You don't want to go anywhere.
Have you visited the On the Move with Mack Worley store? We've got amazing original design t-shirts, hoodies, cell phone cases, and coffee mugs for sale at OnTheMoveShow.com. Just click the shop link on our homepage. You won't want to miss out on the iHeart Open Carry and Bear Arms t-shirts for only $20 plus shipping. Again, just go to OnTheMoveShow.com and click the shop link on our homepage. Your purchases will help make the On the Move show bigger and better. We appreciate your support. Are you an activist who needs affordable flyers or brochures for passing out literature? Or a political candidate who's looking for business cards, logo designs, yard signs, or vehicle decals? Email me, Latasha Worley, for all your graphic design needs at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com. And don't forget to mention On the Move to get a 10% discount on all graphic design services.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I think this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III.
All right, gang, we're back. If you want to comment, have your voice be heard or anything like that, you got something on your mind, give us a call. The number of the show is 360-450-5625. And we are still with Brett Sanders, and I'm really excited to talk to him about civility. So, Brett, you made a post on Facebook, and I think I actually watched a Facebook video of you talking about civility. You were saying that the time now is to be offensive. If you have a liberty-oriented message, you have something that you want to get out there, the way to do it is to be offensive. And I'd like to hear your take on it. I don't want to put words in your mouth. So can you explain your position on this?
Sure. Yeah, and you pretty much nailed it. We're seeing an ever polarized political spectrum. So we've got the left, which I consider complete lunacy, and starting to really proliferate on like college campuses, where you're seeing these kids that are complete lunatics, almost detached from reality. And then we have what I consider like the political right, the traditional curt conservatives, who always want to take the high road. They always want to be, take an intellectual debate and write an article or try to rebut a point, very nicely and tie it up with a bow. And I'm saying, like, the people over here on the left are not susceptible to debate. Okay, there is no debate with these people. It's just one big victim culture, and everybody is offended, and you can't literally have a debate without being called a racist, homophobe, xenophobe, all these other acronyms that they've got, because they just don't have any intellectual honesty. And so I'm over here saying, okay, well, the traditional debate didn't work. Let's just offend these people and, really just basically, prove out how lunacy they are. I mean, they're just detached from reality, and I think that the time for civil debate's over, and we just hit them with offensive speech. Basically true speech, because the truth is offensive these days, if you haven't noticed. So yeah, I'm not opposed to getting out of your comfort zone and being offensive with these people, because it seems like that's the only way they're going to listen. And if you're offensive to somebody by speaking truth, and they parrot that back at you by being offended, all of a sudden your voice is magnified. They look like idiots, and you look like, a sane person in the conversation. So that's kind of my perspective on it, and it's worked in a few different scenarios where offensive speech has shocked people essentially into basically magnifying whatever point we're trying to make. And so, and I think Donald Trump has sort of, kind of been a leader in that space of being sort of offensive and saying things that are uncomfortable to people, and not fearing the backlash, because we all know the media, and we all know their cronies and in academia and everywhere else thrive on this victimhood culture, and they will use the media to try and stifle debate. And it's time that we just stand up and not fear these cultural Marxists, is what I call them. And however that is for you or your niche or whatever that is, just get out of your comfort zone and don't be afraid of these people.
So, I mean, I can agree with a lot of what you just said in regards to, doing something that is true, saying or doing something that is true that may offend liberals or the left or whoever we're talking about. The statist out there. Just for example, we're not supposed to talk about both of us being white. We're not allowed to talk about the crime rate coming from the black community. They have they commit over 50% of the murders, and they have done so for the last 30 years, even though they only comprise of 13% of the population. That's kind of racist for us to talk about.
Correct.
Yeah,
that fact alone, coming out of your mouth, would make you a racist.
Yeah,
and that's what I'm basically talking about. Exactly.
But I don't feel like what I said was being offensive. I stated a fact, and I do think that and I completely agree with you that it's very difficult for us to break this. Essentially, a brainwashing that they're getting from these educational institutions, essentially indoctrination centers, that teach them that America is bad and that white people are racist, and it's actually not possible for a black person or a person of color to be racist because they don't have any power, and power is what's required to be racist. If you're not in a position of power, you can't actually be racist. This is what they're actually being taught. So to hear these kind of stats, it definitely is offensive to them, even though it is true. I will say, but I don't necessarily think that that's how, like, being offensive is how you it's the only way, as you said, to get them to listen. In fact, I don't think that they are listening no matter what we say because they're unreasonable people. They're not willing to look at the facts. If we tell them, well, first of all, correlation does not equal causation. This is a scientific mantra that they always say. Just because black people, may be being arrested or shot even at a disproportionate rate than any other demographic. If we point to the crime statistics that's coming from that community, yeah, that may offend them. But I don't think that they listen. Either way, if we're saying something contrary to their beliefs, I think that they just drown us out and don't give us any merit in our argument. They just think that we're racist or bigots, and I don't think it's effective at changing the unreasonable minds by being offensive with truth. Now, it's another thing entirely, and I just want to make sure you're not actually just saying to be offensive just for the point of being offensive. You're saying to break this political correctness of and actually speak about things that are actually important and factual, right?
Sure. Yeah, and to clarify. Typically, the left or the Black Lives Matter crowd or whoever my message is intended at is typically not my intended audience. I'm not trying to change their minds. I don't believe they are susceptible to debate or reason or logic or any of that. My mission is to basically win the idea war, win the propaganda war, because there are a lot of reasonable, logical people out there who are sitting on the sidelines right now and are starting to wake up to the political madness that's going on. And, they may listen to the Black Lives Matter crowd or, the feminist movement or any of the other lunacy on the college campus. And, maybe they believe it, maybe they don't, maybe they're, suspicious of it. But when you've got someone that is firing bullets back, verbal bullets or proverbial bullets back at them, and it starts echoing out really loud, right? If you've got some, really just pure, unfiltered language coming back at them, where you're not afraid to sound like a racist because that's what you'll be called, or a sexist or whatever, because if you enter these debates, that's what you will be called by the other side. And a lot of people are just not willing to do that. They're afraid of, be thrown under the bus and affect their personal life or their jobs or any number of things that, could affect the backlash. But I'm saying if we, want to save ourselves from these cultural Marxists and prevent them from basically taking over our lives completely, someone's got to stand up, and short of a violent revolution or something, all I'm saying is we need to start being mean, very mean to these people in the public domain, to the point where they don't want to push their lunatic agenda any further in fear of looking like an idiot. And, luckily we've seen some of these people on TV just completely embarrassed. Some of their idiot spokesmen have got on like national TV and just completely embarrassed themselves because they don't have arguments. They have emotion and appeal to authority and this and that, but they don't have logic or facts on their side. So, and that's something we have. Their debate is so easy to smash, and I just wish more people would kind of break out of their shell and just start being fearless of the backlash. And I think we're starting to see this because, out of this leftist movement, cultural Marxist movement, we've seen what we're calling the alt-right, which is kind of this loose formation of radical, offensive, politically incorrect, people who are firing back. And for me, it's refreshing to see, and it's kind of like an organic response to this imbalance that we've seen in the political field. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. And it's not a perfect science, and everybody has their niche. We have academics who reach a different demographic, and we have rabble-rouser activists who tend to reach a different demographic. And so, at least for my political sphere and the people that are more susceptible to my message, being loud and boisterous and offensive, with some constraint. I'm not saying just go out there and be a madman and just use profanity left and right, because that can be lost as well. But, a countered, offensive, loud message can go a long way, and it can go a long way to prevent some of the Marxists that we're seeing kind of come to fruition as these millennials kind of start voting and becoming active in the political process.
So let me, because you mentioned kind of having our own version of a backlash. Would you consider this kind of like our version of political correctness, where we basically slam them for their illogical and unreasonable point of view, and we basically berate and belittle them for having ridiculous points of view, Marxist ideology, things that violate their own logic? Do you kind of consider that reverse political correctness in what you're talking about? Because this is why I think civility is important, because when we start attacking people, don't you think that kind of like puts them off from our message and makes them stop listening to us at all?
Well, I would argue that these people that we are fighting against are not going to be susceptible to our message at all, ever. I think they're a different species of animal, to be honest. And, I don't think that we should share a government to begin with, because we've seen, history has shown that these liberal progressive types don't really provide a lot of value to society. And so what do? They become academics. They infiltrate the culture. They take over governments, and they just ruin complete societies with their Marxist type socialism, communism. And the conservatives are out busy building businesses and nurturing capital and making good investments and whatnot. And meanwhile, this leftist communist agenda takes over government, and a couple hundred years before you know it, you've got a societal collapse, and you're looking at like a Soviet type Russian collapse. And so, I don't think we're too far from that, to be honest. But while we're here and while we're still somewhat in a civil society, I think we should fight their ideas with every tool necessary. We should not hold back at this point. Short of picking up rifles and having a civil war, I think it's not asking a lot for people to get out of their comfort zone, become politically active, and start fighting these ideas by any means necessary.
I see. So you kind of you mentioned the alt-right, and the way I look at the alt-right, personally, I'm very careful about associating myself with these people, because I do believe that within the alt-right, not the entire alt-right, just like, for example, all Black Lives Matter people who attend that or attend an event or support the message of Black Lives Matter, I don't believe that all of them are communists and want the complete destruction of capitalism. But the leaders of that movement do. So with the alt-right, I'm concerned about the influence of like the neo-Nazis and the KKK and people that do actually believe that there are different species of animals out there, as you said, and don't want to affiliate with them, and want to basically take the power back from people that they are prejudiced against or bigoted against, or for whatever reason, whatever. My concern about the alt-right is that it has ties to neo-fascism, neo-Nazism, and straight up racism. So, what are your thoughts on the alt-right with that? Are you okay with associating yourself with them?
I do associate myself loosely with the alt-right, but it's not an organized movement. I mean, you've got people of all sorts of creeds, colors, racist backgrounds, normal backgrounds, and to be honest, I think a lot of the neo-Nazi and racist propaganda you're seeing are a bunch of 17-year-old kids that just like to get a rise out of people, and obviously it does, and there's just this culture of victimhood that, like, oh my gosh, someone posted a Nazi flag or something, and they completely lose themselves, and it's like, this is imagery, obviously, that's horrific, a horrific time in history and should not be celebrated. But the fact that people who are not even associated with that time period have no concept of what it means, get completely outraged, and it's almost like a fake outrage, a false outrage. And I think there's just a bunch of basement dwellers that just enjoy getting a rise out of these kind of mentally detached leftists, and that's one way to do it. It's not my style. It's not like I would ever do that, but I do find some humor in that, if that makes sense, if that's possible.
I mean, it's like seeing your enemy or somebody you don't like, have bad things happen to them. There's a German word for it. I can't remember what it's called, but seeing somebody else experience something negative, basically. But
right.
I mean, I get what you're saying. One of the things that just with the alt-right in particular, there are elements within inside this. And again, I'm not saying the entire alt-right is like this, but there are some elements that, for example, don't believe that the Holocaust happened, at least not the way it's been depicted throughout history. And those are again, I am very careful at associating myself with people, and I don't want to associate myself with those people. That's why I'm not really a fan of the alt-right. And again, I think the alt-right is very strongly connected, and the rise of the alt-right is connected to Donald Trump, who I don't affiliate myself with either. So, for me, in a couple of minutes, I'm going to be watching this debate. And again, I don't really have a dog in the fight. The way I look at it is we are debating now how we can destroy America and individual liberty, as opposed to how we can actually resolve our issues, talk about our actual problems, the reason why we're dependent on things like foreign oil and things like that, and how much regulations we have, and how much the federal government has an impact on your life, as opposed to what we're going to hear in a couple of minutes here. So, it does. One of the things I'm kind of curious about, because you said, some of these people, they may say things just to get a rise out of people. Isn't that kind of similar to what you're doing, though, with being offensive?
Yeah, in a way. It's almost like playing into their victimhood. Okay, because that's mostly what these people are about. They want to be offended. They want to be a victim. They always are looking for ways to be outraged. And all I'm saying is, let's give them ways to be outraged by basically speaking truth to power in ways that they just can't handle. And, hopefully they'll all retreat to their safe spaces, and they'll be so scared to talk and debate that they will no longer be our problem. But that's some very wishful thinking.
So I mean, I kind of want to focus here for the last few minutes of the show on the difference between reasonable people and unreasonable people. And I do think that in terms of civility, I think that we are able to kind of soften our opponents who may be leaning towards a Marxist ideology or something like that. But if we explain to them and actually, come about it from a position of civility, of, look, I'm not your enemy. We're just talking about a logical point here, and if you disagree with me, well, then let's just hash it out, and maybe they'll listen to us, as opposed to coming out about it from a really confrontational position where I'm just trying to offend you and trying to set you off or get a rise out of you or something. Wouldn't you agree that we at least have some ability to affect their position, and maybe change their mind on it if we approach it from a civil aspect of basically just trying to hash it out and point out the logical errors in the way that they're thinking or their policies? Do you think there's any benefit to civility in that, or no?
No, I think you're wasting your time talking to these people. I think most are completely detached from reality. I mean, all the information is there. If they really wanted it, it's all out there. If they wanted to be honest and, have a realistic conversation about the information that they're protesting or that they're pushing, all the information's there. I mean, all it takes is reason and logic, and they don't have it. And so when you try to talk some sense into these people, you're just going to end up talking in circles. What I'm saying is, if you attack them verbally or in the media or however creative ways that you have to do that, what you're actually doing is you're speaking to all the other logical people out there who would see this, if it's in a video or if it's in some way you can distribute it.
Like an online platform or something like that.
Exactly. So when you confront these people in their own space and you call them out on their lack of logic and their detachment from reality, you're not trying to convert that person. You're basically making a spectacle of them and sharing that with the world, and all of a sudden, all the people out there who are susceptible to logic and reason are like, wow, yeah, these people are just completely out there, and you've won some more converts to your ideas.
I agree with where you're. I agree with where you're coming from. The thing I'm concerned about, though, is not connecting on an individual basis. Because the way that I look at civility is it allows me to connect with you as an individual. If we're just having an individual conversation, and, I'm being civil right now. You and I disagree. Maybe the things I say you disagree with, but maybe you'll think about it later. What I want to get from a civil conversation is I want to get people to think. Because, honestly, I feel like a lot of people, yes, the information is out there, and they have every reason to have already looked at it. And what I want to do is to convince them, hey, there is information out there. Go look. Listen to what I'm saying. If you disagree with me, I can send you links of things of why I believe my position to be accurate, and I want to get people to think about it, and I just don't think that we experience that by being disrespectful or offensive to somebody. I want to try to relate to them on an individual level, and on a massive scale, even like, for example, like podcasting or video or something. I think that by talking to people and relating them on an individual level, those listening will be able to decide for themselves who is being logical, who's following a logical train of thought, and perhaps maybe will persuade them as well. Again, for me, the whole reason why I want to be civil is to convince people to think. Honestly, I just want you to think. If you come to the conclusion that communism is right, okay, but in the process, I'm going to point out all of your logical flaws. Why what you want isn't going to be accomplished by what your policies are or what your positions are. You don't see any benefit to that?
There's definitely benefit there, and we have a lot of reasonable, conservative, libertarian minds that are just every day on the radio waves, on podcasts that are speaking truth to power. In a podcast, a very, very conservative format, and yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I just don't think that's going to reach the radical thinkers and the radical rabble-rouser activists that I believe we need.
Agreed.
And I think the everyday Joe is going about their business, and they see people talking to them and saying, yeah, we're going to vote your rights away, we're going to take your guns, and they're afraid to talk. They're afraid to say anything in fear of being a racist or homophobe or whatever names they have for these people, and I think a lot of people are just scared to just get into the debate. And I think if more people were standing up and were willing to take these people on, in the public sphere. And we're seeing this a lot at, the political rallies, at the presidential rallies and such, where people are confronting one another with and challenging their ideas. And we're seeing people unafraid. And I think that is very powerful for a political movement. If you have people who are no longer afraid to stand up and debate and get their ideas out there in a confrontational manner, in a heated manner. I'm not saying be violent, but there can be some heated exchanges, and if those are captured and shared and those hit the internet, that can empower other people to do the same in their own daily lives at the right moment. Whenever that happens, that kind of stuff sticks with people. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. Now, I'm not saying that every time you encounter a liberal, you just gotta shout down their face and demean them. Although it might be a good idea, but there's time for civility, and it's got to be a countered measure. But at the end of the day, I think the more people that stand up and the more people that combat their lunacy with confrontational, remarks and unfiltered remarks, I think we can empower this movement to grow at rates that we've never seen.
So. That's Brett Sanders on YouTube. Tell me your YouTube address and all your social media, website, all that good stuff if you have it.
Sure, yeah. It's youtube.com/Brett Sanders, and you can find me on my website, brettsanders.me, and all the social media platforms, I'm Brett Sanders with 2 T's.
Awesome. All right. Well, Brett, I really do appreciate you joining us. I'm going to finish up with some thoughts here, final thoughts, and then go watch the rest of the debates. I really appreciate you joining us, man.
Thanks for having me, and maybe we'll do this again sometime.
Absolutely. I'd love to have you back on. So I'll hit you up and let you know when we have some openings. All right, bud?
All right. Thanks, Mac.
All right. Take it easy. All right, folks, so we're going to cut to a commercial break. We're going over to, just a little bit, just a couple minutes. We're going to take a commercial break. Then I'm going to give you my final thoughts here, and we'll be right back. After that, I'm going to go watch the debate. So you guys don't want to miss what's coming up next.
Have you visited the On the Move with Mack Worley store? We've got amazing original design t-shirts, hoodies, cell phone cases, and coffee mugs for sale at OnTheMoveShow.com. Just click the shop link on our homepage. You won't want to miss out on the iHeart Open Carry and Bare Arms t-shirts for only $20 plus shipping. Again, just go to OnTheMoveShow.com and click the shop link on our homepage. Your purchases will help make the On The Move show bigger and better. We appreciate your support. Are you an activist who needs affordable flyers or brochures for passing out literature? Or a political candidate who's looking for business cards, logo designs, yard signs, or vehicle decals? Email me, Latasha Worley, for all your graphic design needs at latashawworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com. And don't forget to mention On The Move to get a 10% discount on all graphic design services.
This is Dan Sandini of DaylightDisinfectant.com, citizen journalist, friend of the late Andrew Breitbart, and cohort of James O'Keefe. I listen to On the Move with Mack Worley because the only time he's wrong is when he disagrees with me.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III.
All right, we're back. I'm going to close this out with some final thoughts here. Joe on Spreaker, he says, why are people so easily offended nowadays? Some people, no matter how civil you are, they will still find a way to be offended. And he also goes on to say that the debates are going to be rigged. So one of the things that I want to focus here on is the difference between reasonable people and unreasonable people. I want to tie this into the non-aggression principle. So there are people out there, like, for example, the leaders of the Black Lives Matter movement, and some very ideological Democrats or socialists out there who you're not going to be able to reach. These are unreasonable people. These are people that have an ideology, have an agenda, have things that they're pushing, and it doesn't matter how illogical they are. It doesn't matter how many errors of logic you point out to them. They're going to continue to believe what they believe because they're unreasonable people. So my difference of opinion between Brett Sanders and, again, I respect the guy's opinion. I understand why he's formed his opinion. I don't want to try to go after the rabble-rousers out there. I'm not trying to go after the leaders of these organizations who are spouting out these Marxist ideologies because they believe this. This is what they believe. It doesn't matter why they believe it. It doesn't matter what you say to convince them. They've already formed that opinion. My purpose of being civil is to try to appeal to the reasonable people. People who don't want to violate the non-aggression principle. And they may not even know what that non-aggression principle means, but inherently people know it's wrong to do harm to somebody else. People know that it's wrong to kill others, to take their stuff. They know it's wrong. So if you can point out the logical inconsistencies of somebody supporting, let's say, for example, the Black Lives Matter movement, if you can point out their logical inconsistencies, you will be able to convince reasonable people through civility, as long as you don't denigrate them to the point of where they're not going to listen to your message at all. If you engage with them at an individual level, and you're doing so even on a massively broadcasted platform like Facebook or YouTube or something like that, other people who see the illogical positions being pointed out and being criticized, they may be swayed by your argument. Again, our target here is to target non-unreasonable people. Okay, we want to go after the reasonable folks. We want to talk to people who just haven't thought all the way through about whatever issue we're referring to, and point out the logical flaws. And some people we're not going to be able to convince. But again, we are being defeated right now in terms of the indoctrination state, the educational system run by the federal government. We're being beaten. They're churning out more statists than we're able to convert into libertarians or people who are or at least interested in the philosophy of liberty. Free markets, self-ownership, things like that. We're losing that battle. There are more statists every day than people who love liberty. People, and even inside our liberty crew, we start to infight about people, people who are worshiping other people, like Donald Trump supporters. Who, not all of them, again, not all. Some of them admit that he's a deeply flawed candidate, and they're choosing the lesser of two evils. And those people are the ones that are ideologically consistent. But the ones who put this guy up on a pedestal, continue to carry his water, and do things like Sean Hannity is doing, and just making excuses for things that violate free market principles, the non-aggression principle, and individual liberty. Those are the ones that are being unreasonable. And again, it happens on both sides. So I hope that we don't see an end to reason, and we don't see an end to civility, because if we do, all we're going to be doing is shouting each other down, and I do not see any benefit in that. When the conversation stops and all we're doing is shouting at each other and demonizing each other, we're not going to, A, be able to spread the message of liberty, and B, we're not going to win. The left is much better at this tactic. They've been doing this for a long, long time. And if we do somehow win, what sprouts out of that from the right, I don't believe to be a pro-liberty agenda. I believe it will be more along the lines of fascist. So these are the things I'm concerned about. And I hope that you guys will at least try to, the people, you need to identify the people in your life that you can talk to about this. You know, again, there's some benefit in magnifying your perspective or your point by being offensive with truth, but there's another level that you need to connect on an individual level with people and explain to them why our ideas are better, why a pro-liberty message is better, and why it's more logically consistent. And I don't think we're going to get to that point by shouting each other down. But anyway, that's our show for today. I certainly appreciate you guys tuning in. I'm going to go drink a lot more beer and listen to the presidential debates. I hope you guys have a good night and stay safe and all that good stuff. Don't forget to check us out every Sunday at our website, OnTheMoveShow.com. We broadcast every Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also on Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. You can follow us on there. I would certainly appreciate it. Like us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. Follow us on Twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow. And subscribe to us on YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow. And as always, know your rights, assert your rights, and get on the move.